This holiday, BMW has reunited 3 members of the family at the BMW Road Home Sales event. The Agile X3, engineered for any adventure. The plug-in hybrid X5, commanding the streets with unmatched presence. And the all-electric i4, charging into the future with impeccable performance. Hurry in to find what powers your journey at the BMW Road Home Sales event. BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Visit Valley BMW Center today for attractive lease and finance offers.
Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your Resource for Success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, CEO and founder of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and award-winning author. And welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have Sunil Godse. Sunil has spent his career implementing intuitive branding that leverages intuition to earn the trust of those who matter in under 14 seconds that helps crush the competition. Leveraging intuitive branding has not only had him successfully grow a number of ventures to close to 20 million as an entrepreneur, but he has also accelerated the success of other businesses, helping startups go from 5 to 6 figures in revenues and helping a number of Fortune 500 companies double their profits while solidifying their brand as the preferred choice in the marketplace. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Mr. Sunil Godse. Hey, Sunil, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity to speak about intuition and how it's so valuable when it comes to your personal life and also in business.
Well, I'm telling you, as we talked a little bit before we get started, I'm truly excited about having this conversation because I don't think that we use our intuition enough because we kind of second guess it. But before we dive into this, Sunil, why don't you tell my listeners a little bit more about who Sunil Godse really is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the president of Radical Solutions Group, and what I do is I look at the power of intuition, and I use it to leverage its power to really create trusted relationships. And so, if you look at, I'll touch a bit of the podcasting view on the personal side, but switch to business a little more so to keep in line with sort of the bio that you had. But if you look at how we live our lives, we're often living to the opinions, values, and thoughts and beliefs of other people. And we've done this as we grow older. For example, when I was 5 years old, I remember these video games that my dad I wanted to buy, and my dad said they're too expensive. Mm-hmm. And I distinctly remember this voice saying, "Sunil, go door to door to raise money." And I had my 2.5-year-old brother in tow, lots of milk and cookies, and I raised $200 on a Saturday. Wow. $100 went to my dad. The other $100 went to charity because that was something I absolutely loved. So intuition for me, at 5 years old, was really, really strong. And when I looked at the research, there was a paper that showed that intuition is apparently in babies as young as 2 months old when they looked at what they called intuitive physics. Mm-hmm. So the premise that I had is that you're born with intuition was something that's already backed a bit by research. But what happens is when you grow, so many people give you their opinions, their beliefs, you have societal norms and all mm-hmm. these pressures that you fall into, and you lose that relationship with yourself. Or the trusted people that are really there as a foundation for success, and you fall into the trap of following these other people, and they steer you away from what I call intuitive signals, and I'll get into that mm-hmm. in a bit here. But if you look at that happening to me, now me being South Asian male, and some people might be able to tell with my name, mm-hmm. but there's really kind of 4 career doors that you're afforded. One is a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or failure. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. And I picked door number 3, which was engineering, and mm-hmm. I hated it. Mm-hmm. And yet my intuition was bubbling up in me saying, you need to be an entrepreneur. And I continued to ignore it for societal norms, for the love of my dad. And I got I wasted 3 years in a career that I didn't enjoy. Yet in the second of my third year, I ended up becoming a private investor with a Mexican restaurant chain. And pretty soon, within a year, I was making 5 times more in dividends than I was as a civil engineer. And so I quickly quit engineering, and that started my entrepreneurial journey.
Wow.
And what I quickly learned is that when you have that trust factor with others in the business sense, then what happens is people want to work for you. And then customers really want to come to buy your products and services because you have this trusted relationship with you. And that's what solidifies what I call intuitive branding. So it starts with the leadership trusting himself or herself, being authentic enough to be slightly vulnerable, but also treating people with respect in the workplace, allowing them to be creative, allowing them to, tell you that you're wrong. Right. And it's a safe space for them. And so when you have that kind of an environment, that creates a culture of trust.
Absolutely.
And when and then when I looked at the science behind trust, that trust actually starts in 33 milliseconds. And by the time you exchange time, effort, or money, that happens in under 14 seconds based on MRI studies. So if you cannot capture the trust of someone within 14 seconds, you're finished. And in business, when you do have a trusted environment, and I have several case studies of this, what happens is your top talents start coming from your competitors. You start to woo away the customers from your competitors, and you starve them. And so the tagline I have for intuitive branding is essentially you eliminate your competition in under 14 seconds. And it's all based on intuition and leveraging its power for relationships. And so my career, my entrepreneurial career, with the $20 million I had with 5 or 6 businesses, was very much about having that trusted environment first.
Right.
And then the business followed. And then that subsequently is something that I took into consulting to help other companies with some big brands like Citibank and SAP and Western Digital.
Right.
And then now I've got the whole intuitive branding where I'm starting to now coach other businesses specifically on how to optimize their intuition. And it's actually, intuition is really, really complex. Like we talk about this from, okay, we hear that voice or we get that gut feeling.
Right.
But the way that intuition really kind of functions, it's like when you drive a car. When you sit in a car, you either turn the key or nowadays you push a button. And you hear the whir of the engine. And so if the whir of the engine, those are what I call intuitive signals. And these signals, there's 2 types. They're positive and negative signals. And so positive signals are the ones that tell you that the direction that you're about to go in is the right direction. It's the right decision to make. And some of the more common positive signals are things like, getting a pull, feeling a pull, or just feels right, or the dots connecting.
Right.
And the negative signals are ones that are a little bit more uncomfortable in nature. And these are the ones that are telling you, that's not such a great decision.
Right.
And so some of those rubs are that gut feeling, or, in my case, I lose my peripheral vision very quickly. I get hyper-focused and my eyebrows cross. And that's my first signal to say something that I'm thinking or about to do is not the right direction. Wow. And so, and these are very unique because you and I have very unique experiences. And because we have unique experiences, so are our signals. So like in one really unique positive signal I heard is from a CEO. He's now run 2 multi-million-dollar businesses based on this omen that pops up behind his right rear shoulder. No color, no shape, but he just knows that there's this apparition that comes. And when this apparition comes, that's his positive intuitive signal saying, whatever you're doing, say yes. Wow. And the opposite when it comes to negative signals is I had this entrepreneur who I was interviewing on failure, which was the subject of my first book of the 2. My second book's Gut, which is on intuition. And when I was asking about his intuitive signals, he says, you know what, Sunil, I've never thought about intuitive signals. Yet, when he started to describe the stories of when he got into businesses for the wrong reasons, like money, fame, or ego, as he's telling the story, he's grabbing his left earlobe. And then 10 minutes in, he says, oh my God, Sunil, I just figured out what my intuitive signal is. Every bad decision that he's made that he can remember, his left earlobe pulsated with heat. And so that's where the uniqueness of these signals come in. And so, yes, we can have that voice or we can have that gut feeling.
Right.
But people really have to.
Whatever the adventure, there's a BMW engineered to take it on. The X3 delivers a striking design with agile performance. The 100% electric i4 packed with pure electric energy. Or the plug-in hybrid X5, an impressive, versatile SUV granting full control on every journey. Choose what powers your next adventure during the BMW Road Home Sales Event. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Hurry in for exceptional offers through January 2nd. Visit BMWUSA.com for details.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying, or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Take some time to dig deep and figure out what their unique inventory of signals are. And so one question that I kept getting all the time was, well, these signals, I mean, are they pulled from the air, or like where do they come from? And so if we go back to that car analogy, we can drive the car, but we don't necessarily have to be mechanics. I don't pop open the hood to figure out all the gears and the oil and all that stuff. I just fill gas and I drive.
Right.
But what feeds those signals are one of 4 different types of intuition. This is where we're starting to get into the complexity of intuition. And the best way that I can demonstrate what these 4 intuitive signals, the intuitive types are, is through a non-believer, and taking this friend of mine in 1 hour from completely dismissing intuition to completely believing in intuition. And so this fellow, his name is John Rothschild. He was in investment banking. And when you're in investment banking, your decisions are based on spreadsheets and data.
Right.
There is no room for things like manifestation, voices from God. And back in 2012 and 13, when I was doing research for my second book, God, he's looking at this and he's looking at me saying, Sunil, come on. You want to interview me on intuition? What are you talking about? Like, what are you smoking? That stuff doesn't exist. Right? So I'm thinking, oh my God, so I said, John, would you do an interview for me? He says, you know what? I haven't seen you for a couple of years. Why don't you come down? I'll give you an hour and let's just catch up. So I've got my film crew with me driving to see him. And I'm thinking, oh boy, this is going to be such a great interview.
Right.
And so I set up my camera and the camera's on. So this is now recording. And so I tell him about the CEO that sees omens. And he goes, you know what, Sunil, I really wish I could shake that guy's hand, but come on. Okay, listen, any decision you make is based on learning and experience. And so now starts my journey of educating John on intuition. And so one of the first of the 4 types of intuition is called experiential intuition. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you're born with intuition. And when you're born, there's 5,000 to 6,000 experiences per day that you have. when you're older, 28 to 35,000 experiences that you have. And every single piece of experience, every single piece of learning, both good or bad, formal or informal, goes into the subconscious area of your brain like a library. So if you look at your brain like an iceberg, 90% below water is the subconscious area of your brain. The 10% above water is the conscious part of the brain. And so when you are about to make a decision, you've got billions and billions and billions of data points already just by living that informs those signals to tell you that, okay, here's some experience that's telling you that the decision that you're about to make has worked in the past. Go ahead with it. That's a positive signal. Or conversely, if you're about to make a decision that didn't work out in the past for you or somebody else, and the intuition's caught that, it's going to send you a negative signal saying, that's not so good because in the past it didn't work. And so in some cases, your intuition has you go against the data. And John was looking at me and he says, that's kind of funny, Sunil, that you mentioned that, because I actually have an example of that happening. And I said, well, please tell me what happened. And so John was in the business of putting franchise locations in, like a McDonald's or a Wendy's or, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And what his team would do is they would take a look at a possible franchise location on a benchmarking system out of 10. And 9 out of 10 meant that they put a franchise location in there, and they would look at things like demographics, development in the area, and traffic patterns as examples. And so there was this really crappy area of Toronto, Canada, where his team looked at it and they said, this is a 5.5 out of 10. It's not going to work. And now we're going to get into the second of the 4, called situational intuition. And we've all had this where we go into an environment and we go, something's off. And that's situational intuition playing a role. And so what John does is he walks into this dilapidated area of Toronto and he's looking around and he says, and I'm paraphrasing now, he says, I'm thinking that we should put a location here. And he goes, perhaps it's intuition, I'm not sure. But he went against his team's data and he put a location there. He put a franchise. And that franchise location happened to be the first franchise location for the beer market, which ended up being the most profitable franchise under his whole brand portfolio.
Wow.
And so at some point,
this holiday, BMW has reunited 3 members of the family at the BMW Road Home Sales Event. The Agile X3, engineered for any adventure. The plug-in hybrid X5, commanding the streets with unmatched presence. And the all-electric i4, charging into the future with impeccable performance. Hurry in to find what powers your journey at the BMW Road Home Sales Event. BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Visit the Valley BMW Center today for attractive lease and finance offers.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
John's purpose changes. And he, instead of wanting to be an investment banker, said that to himself, that I want to actually own a business. And now we're going to get into the third of the 4, called relational intuition. And what relational intuition does is it filters people through to only allow people in your inner circle who are people who are going to be true foundations for your success. They really care about your success. They're not yes people. They will give you the constructive criticism, but their goal is to see you succeed in life. And that's what relational intuition does. And so in John's case, when his purpose changed, everything that had to do, everybody who was associated with money, fame, ego, high-end restaurants, private jets, limousines, financial security, all of these people said, John, you have a $3 to $4 million a year job, and you want to run it you want to run a tiny restaurant or you want a business? Like, what are you doing? Are you nuts? Yet the only person who ever asked him why was his wife.
Wow.
And so at this point, we're about 45 to 50 minutes in the interview. Mm-hmm. And we started this interview with him saying, Sunil, intuition does not exist. And now, when he's describing this situation, he says his wife asked him why. I'm paraphrasing. This is now on camera. He says, Sunil, sometimes you can have all the data in the world, but you have to trust your intuition. Mm. And he looked at his wife, and he said, this just feels right. Mm-hmm. That's the intuitive signal. There's the intuitive signal. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth of the four is called creative intuition. Creative intuition is the actual decision that you make. And if you're eating a sandwich or turning left at the lights, that's not very creative. Mm-hmm. And so your creative intuition in those cases is low. But in John's case, this is a guy making $3 to $4 million a year, going to run a brand new company. And you would also think that his intuition picks a company or a business that has sort of healthy cash flows, strong revenues, right, and some good good balance sheet. Mm-hmm. Nope, not his intuition says, John, you go run this tiny bankrupt little restaurant. That's what I'm going to set up for you. And so John does. He listens to his intuition, rolls up his sleeves, walks into that tiny bankrupt little restaurant. That tiny bankrupt little restaurant ended up being Eastside Mario's location number 1. And over the next 20 years, before he retired, he grew that one location into over 1,000 under brand names. And he amassed a $2 billion empire. Why? Because it all felt right.
Right.
That's the power of intuition. That's the complexity of intuition. And that's how intuition speaks to you through these signals. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And that's the complexity of it. And so my role is to take that complexity and imprint that onto leadership teams and and employees and customers. And it drives how they do their marketing decisions, how they do their sales decisions, how do they treat their employees, how do they make their hiring decisions,
right? All
based on the 4 types of intuition and intuitive signals. And it guides them tremendously to drive that trust that they so need.
Wow. Oh my goodness. You just dropped some major, as I call, pink nuggets to the listeners.
Awesome.
And, to hear what you're saying, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and we'll kind of go back through this whole conversation a little bit more because, in the beginning you talked about your career and, and you being Asian and the things that you go through and you have the 4 options. I find that all of us, people of color, have always been given that. Well, here's your options in life. You can only do these 2 things. And for us, I've always heard, well, you get education, you go get a job. We heard that for years and years to come because that's the safe thing. That was the conformity. That's the thing that we've all been taught. And to be able to come out of that conformity and do what you want to do, none times we're chastised for that. You're being told. And, obviously, it's not just about people of color, but people in general are constantly being told what they cannot do. I see more and more of our generations coming out today where they're saying, hey, I don't want to take this career path. I don't want to do education. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I want to live my life in full. And they're using their given talents. But I also wonder if they even understand that it's that intuition that they've been given and that we've all have had implanted in us from the time that we've been brought into this world, that, that's what a lot of these generations of today are doing. And that's what you are retraining our brains to learn to do. What is your thought process on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's exactly what happens. So first of all, this whole concept of intuition and signals and four types is something that I had to figure out. And I had to look at the science of it and really and I interviewed over 1,000 people before I kind of got this model down. And so what I ended up finding out is we're so inculcated in society with the way that we make the decisions based on the values and opinions of others that we forget that we have these intuitive signals, and we don't really actually realize that these are signals until they get so loud that we can't ignore them anymore. And in fact, I had someone who was in a bad relationship, and so she got into a situation where some guy was really getting her financially destitute, and the signals were there, like the rumblings were there to leave, but she kept ignoring those subtle ones because she didn't recognize them, and then slowly but surely they got louder, and then she heard the words "get out." And there was a CEO of a 9-figure company, and he knew he wanted to leave. And again, the rumblings of intuition, the subtle intuitive signals that were saying, you got to get out. And he kept ignoring them. And then he was in the back of an Uber, and he couldn't control the words. It just came out, quit. You got to quit. That's it. It just came out. And so he goes to this board of this a 9-figure mortgage business. And he says, I'm quitting. And they're looking at him going,
you've lost your mind.
Yeah, we're on the Inc. 5000.
Oh, my gosh.
We have a high Glassdoor ceiling rating. We have a huge trusted environment, and you want to leave? And he goes, yeah. And so sure enough, 6 months later, the company imploded because of the economy. So, timing is perfect there for him. Absolutely. But the problem I find after interviewing over 1,000 people is that the only time that they really realize that intuition plays a major role is when they kind of hit rock bottom, or something major has happened to them, that they have to make a change. And what happens is when we start to listen to people who don't really care about our success, we get into situations that we start going downhill, and we're so focused on the hill that's going down, the slope, that we forget to look up. And if we did look up, you would have seen signal after signal, rope after rope that are trying to pull you out. And the only time you're going to go look up is when you do hit rock bottom, because there's only one way to look. And that is up.
Exactly. And that is up, right.
And that's when they realize intuition's there.
Right. And, when you're calling it intuition, in my brain, I'm looking at it as red flags, things that we know we have, like you said, you have those feelings, you have, whether it's coming from the gut, whether everybody does, like I said, it's a different feel for everybody. But I think that, after like you said, when you talk to all these people and they had to hit rock bottom in order to realize that there was something wrong, they there's something wrong, but it's how do you handle it? How do you deal with it before you get to rock bottom? So what do you train, and how do you train these people to realize that you don't have to get to the bottom in order to get back up to the top?
Absolutely. So there's the first step is to get them to find out what their unique inventory of positive and negative signals are. And your listeners can do this right now or right after this podcast. And what they do is they take a sheet of paper, and let's take 2 sheets of paper. You have one, and you put a line down the middle. And then what you do is you start listing the decisions that you made that were good or great decisions in the past. And so beside that, in the next column, what you write down is, what did it feel like? And so what you do in that case is that's your positive intuitive signal. Then you take the second sheet of paper and you do the exact same thing, except you use the bad decisions that didn't work. And where you have to be careful with the bad decisions is that, because, as I was telling you earlier, your intuitive signals start to get louder and louder when you start to ignore them. When you write down a bad decision, you have to be careful to ask, was that the first bad decision or the fourth one? And if it was the fourth one, what was the preceding decision that triggered that decision? And you keep going until you nail the first decision. because that first decision is that subtle intuitive signal that you have, and Oprah calls it a whisper. Right. And so that's what you need to do. And so the problem is if you don't do this homework properly. So let's say you and I go for coffee and we go through this exercise and you've done your homework and I'm a lazy bum and I haven't. And so let's say we're discussing this exercise and you say, you know, Sunil, when I went through this exercise, I identified that my gut, when I get that gut feeling, that's signal number one for me.
This holiday, BMW has reunited 3 members of the family at the BMW Road Home Sales Event. The Agile X3, engineered for any adventure. The plug-in hybrid X5, commanding the streets with unmatched presence. And the all-electric i4, charging into the future with impeccable performance. Hurry in to find what powers your journey at the BMW Road Home Sales Event. BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Visit Valley BMW Center today for attractive lease and finance offers.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying, or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
And so I would, because I'm lazy and I didn't do it, I'd say, oh yeah, the same thing for me. Mm-hmm. But in my case, if that gut feeling is actually signal number 3, then that means that anytime I get that gut feeling, yes, it's a negative signal, but it just means that I've missed signal number 1 and signal number 2.
Right.
And if I've missed signal number 1 and signal number 2, that means I've made 2 bad decisions. And so resulting in the 3rd bad decision. Mm-hmm. So those 2 bad decisions could be me simply stubbing my toe, or my business could be headed towards bankruptcy. I just don't know. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing I do is to take a look at their intuitive signals. And then I get the leadership team to take a look at the 4 types of intuition. And I get them to go through a quiz that shows them which of the 4 types are they the most strongest in, again, based on their past experience. And so we all are strongest in one of the 4 types. And my job is to get them to look at their decision-making so that they equalize the other 3, to bring the other 3 up. So if you're strong in, let's say, relational intuition, then my job is to get you stronger in situational, experiential, and creative intuition, because you need all 4 for them to be in sync. And the leadership team, that's what I do with the leadership team. And then what we do is we take that to marketing decisions, sales decisions, hiring decisions, where we use the same thing, where we use all 4 types and intuitive signals of the team involved in those decisions. And that's how you have great sales programs, marketing programs, because they're tapping into the intuition of others. And that's that trust. So once you understand the signals and you understand the 4 types, now you understand how other people are going to trust you. Mm-hmm. And then you just map every decision based on that template, and away you go. And so to give you a very good example, I had a company that I was brought in to consult, and they were close to about $400,000 in revenues and on the way down. And I was known as a turnaround expert at one time. And so they said, Sunil, we need help. And so the very first thing I do is we have a meeting of all the employees to gauge kind of the trust level. And it was very clear that there was zero trust between the employees and the 2 co-CEOs. None. You can tell by body language. the type of questions that were asked, the tone of the questions, sometimes even the tone of the emails sent back and forth. And that gave me a gauge of the amount of trust in the organization. So I basically told the two co-CEOs, you have to back off on all the decisions. If you want this fixed, you have to let me lead. Mm-hmm. And they said, fine. So one of the very first things I do is I raise all the salaries. And now they're scratching their heads going, oh my God, I think we made a mistake hiring Sunil.
Get this guy out of here.
Yeah, but they were underpaid and they were not listened to. So I fixed the underpaid part to get them above market rates as a sign of respect. And that's what they deserved. Mm-hmm. And the next thing I did is that I involved all the employees to say, how do you guys think we should fix the company? Because they're the ones that know. And by me just simply asking them for their opinion and taking action on their suggestions as a cohesive unit, they saw that trust, that I trusted them and I trusted them enough to implement, that they started to trust me.
Right. And
within 1 year, we stabilized the company. And then I went on an expansion spree with that company. And I was able to look at expansions, putting in expansion locations, all the employees backfilled with the policies, the procedures, all the transactional stuff that I needed because they trusted me. Mm-hmm. And they came together as a team to help me out. And so we went from, by the time I left, we went from basically about $400,000 in suffering to $3.5 million in 2 years with a $10 million revenue rate the next year. And I basically left that for them. And to give you a sense of what happened to the competitors, because my tagline is eliminate your competition in under 14 seconds.
Right.
This company was in the physiotherapy, massage therapy type of health space, what we call allied health. Mm-hmm. And this allied health, typically an allied health business would typically get, I would say, anywhere from $300,000, maybe $400,000 top line revenue, maybe. Ours was billing out at $1 million plus per location. And wow. We took their patients. We had actually patients coming and bringing teams of people. They had so much fun being treated for physiotherapy that and we would have these curtains in between, say, open the curtains. And we're all telling jokes. I mean, it was such a collegial atmosphere. So they felt really, really good as customers or clients or mm-hmm. Patients, if you will. The employees were bringing their friends in. They were having such a great time. We trusted them for their opinions, how they wanted things. If they failed, they were allowed to fail. There was no harm done. So employees were coming from the competitors. Were taking their patients who were naturally coming, and then the word was getting around town mm-hmm. that wow, this new company came in, and they're like everybody's going to them. So the marketplace is loving what we're doing, and the companies around us folded. 4 or 5 of them within a couple of months started getting squeezed by cash, and within 6 months to a year, all the competitors were gone in the area. Well, see, and it was just all bust and trust.
Exactly. But I was going to say, too, it sounds like, this company originally started out with just, I need to make money. Forget about what everybody else needs. We got to have money in our pockets. We want to make this their way. And then when you don't listen to the people who are literally every day doing the work for you, they can see where the problems lie. They can see what needs, to be improved. And them not listening almost put them in a position where they could have been closed as soon as they opened up. And so, with your experiences and your understanding of how to use the proper intuition, but a big part of it is truly just listening to people, and then building and having everything sync that together as it should, because I think that's what even if it's not business, personally, it's the same way. All these 4 concepts that you're talking about, people can use every day in their everyday life. And, I think that all these people that you've interviewed and the people that you've helped, being able to have them accelerate a business in that manner, I think is phenomenal. Just because of some very basic, I won't say skill sets, but intuitions and things that we have within us that we just sometimes are so scared to, utilize, because in our mind, you kind of fight with your mind saying, well, this is wrong, but no, this is right. Like you had the little devil and angel on the shoulder experience,
Yep.
and I'm listening to all your stories and I'm thinking, wow, how many other people would be much more successful in life alone if they would just use their tuition and understand how to utilize it?
Absolutely. And there's a couple of reasons why. Well, there's one big reason why people don't seem to trust their intuition or their intuitive signals, even though they get it, is because this one thing called fear, and there's actually 3 types of fear. And so if I go back to the science of intuition, there's a couple of things that have come up when I looked at some of the MRI studies. And one was that when you use your intuition, it hits the amygdala, which is basically the primitive part of the brain. And there's only 2 things that happen when that part of the brain gets lit. It's telling you either you're going to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, which is a negative intuitive signal. Your intuition is going to say run, or not. You're not. That's simple, and that's a positive intuitive signal. But because we're creatures of habit, because we all just want status quo, when our intuition is telling us to change our lives, what happens is we start to fear. We fear 3 types of fear: fear of change, fear of failure, and fear of the unknown. Right. And even though intuition is telling you, go in this direction, you get fearful of that and you don't. And a great case study I had was a fellow by the name of David Dame. And David was in a wheelchair all his life. And his absolute dream was to actually feel the sand and the water on a beach in his toes. And he ignored his intuition for so many years. And finally, he got the courage to say, I'm going to do it. And he gets wheeled up to that edge where the sand and the water meet his toes. And they're just caressing his toes. And he is just having a ball. And then his biggest fear happened. And he falls flat into the water on his face. Right. And so he was thinking, this is embarrassing. What are other people going to think? And then he stops himself, say, why am I bothered about what other people think? Right? And he said, I have 2 things I can do at this moment, Sunil. One is that I can succumb to that fear and forever regret turning my dream into a reality. I am right here.
This holiday, BMW has reunited 3 members of the family at the BMW Road Home Sales Event. The Agile X3, engineered for any adventure. The plug-in hybrid X5, commanding the streets with unmatched presence. And the all-electric i4, charging into the future with impeccable performance. Hurry in to find what powers your journey at the BMW Road Home Sales Event. BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Visit Valley BMW Center today for attractive lease and finance offers.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Or I can listen to the signal that my intuition is saying, which is telling me, come on, Dave, take a step in the right direction. Come on, Dave, you can take another step into the ocean, and then take a 3rd step. And what he does is that he slowly walks into the ocean, and he ends up going to the point where the water hits the chin.
Oh, wow.
And then he turns around. And that's when he said, I was blown away by how far I had come. And so that's what happens when you trust your intuition to live in the present moment. You trust your signals, and you keep walking until, and that's how far you get.
Right.
And so one of the other problems that we have is that something called opportunity cost when we decide to not listen to our intuition. And what opportunity cost is, it's not just the cost of not listening to your intuition. It's also the cost of the gain that you've lost if you would have trusted your intuition.
Right.
And I'll give you a very, very simple example. One of the fellows I interviewed was a fellow by the name of Vin Jiang. This guy was an international magician and a communicator. And in 2016, he was speaking to over 100,000 people on 80 stages around the world. And everything looked rosy on the outside. High-end cars, downtown LA, apartment, hobnobbing with the hobnobbers. And everything looked great on the outside. Yet his intuition was bubbling and was saying, you are full of crap. And in 2016, it got so loud that he told his wife, I got to fix this because I feel like crap.
Wow.
So he goes to New Zealand, just himself, and he starts putting up these values up on the wall. And after he put these values up on the wall, he looks at them and he says, hold on now. That's what my wife wants. That's what my manager wants. That's what my customers want. Where's Vin? Like, where am I?
Right.
And he takes on down those values and he starts putting up his own values, what he wanted in life. And what he said, what he thought would be a cathartic exercise, one that was really freeing, he was telling me it was actually haunting, because for the very first time in his life, he gave himself permission to live life according to his rules. So he comes back from New Zealand with all this energy and vigor, and he falls back in the same old pattern.
Oh, no.
Same old people. And 6 months go by, and his parents come up from Australia, and his mom pulls him aside, really concerned, and she tells him this saying in Vietnamese that basically says, if you hang around squid, eventually you're going to get some ink on you. And she said, you're hanging around a lot of squid. This is not my boy. And that was the intuitive moment he needed to finally take action. And so he traded in his Mercedes, got the minivan, went out to the suburbs, cut off all the people in his life because they were meaningless.
Right.
They didn't move his life forward. And so when I heard that story, I said, well, Vin, and Vin said, I lost 6 months of my life. And I said, well, Vin, it's actually more than that.
More than
and
that,
this is because it's not just the 6 months of that you've lost ignoring your intuition, but you've also lost 6 months that you could have gained by trusting your intuition. So you've actually lost a full year of your life, my friend. And if you're in the business of helping 100,000 people a year to improve their lives, how many people have you left behind? And how many people did you let down?
Yeah.
And he just said, I never ever thought about that.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how many people that you've talked to that reminds me in my head. I'm thinking that all these individuals were so busy chasing money and not their purpose. And when they realized what their purpose was, because they started to listen to their intuition and started to learn from these things, that it was already there, but realizing, like you said, how much they have lost because they were so busy chasing whatever it was, that dream, that desire, the American dream everybody tells you have to do. And then you got, like you said, all these other people telling you, this is the direction you should go, that you should do it this way. And it's funny how when we start these businesses, we have a clear path. You know what you really want to do. And sometimes, the path has to be changed because it doesn't always work out the way that you thought it would. But that's because you're also paying attention to that intuition until you start allowing other people to put their say into everything you do. Or like you said, you're trying to follow what that conformity might be. And so it's just interesting to hear all these stories that really, we all have gone through at one time or another in our lives, and some people are still continuing to go through it. And I guess that my other question is, and then we're going to kind of close this down, that how did things happen, and how many people reached out, or who did you work with during the pandemic? Because that was a lot of time to be able to sit still, to rethink your life, to figure out what it is you're doing, how this is really affecting you personally and professionally. And if you have a business, how does it affect their business? So what people did you have to deal with, or, who came to you during that time frame saying, hey, I need to get myself together and these are my thoughts?
Yeah. So once the pandemic hit, once there was sort of the emotional upheaval and things kind of settled down, one of the things that it did was to have individuals and companies actually realize, okay, what am I here for? Mm-hmm. Like, they've been stripped of this, that, the other. The economy is going down a rabbit hole that who knows how deep it is. And they've gotten themselves detached from all those externalities to now have those discussions to say, okay, where do I really want to go from here? So when it came to the personal coaching side, I quickly started getting, my groups started getting larger. Mm-hmm. And then I had a couple other coaches that had to take on their larger groups as well. So that got increased. And then I had more companies starting to come to ask me about, okay, so first of all, how do we implement intuitive branding into our organizations? And then how do we do it even with remote teams? And that's the beauty of intuition, is because the 4 types and the signals are based on the individual, and that if you're in sync in a two-way trusted relationship, then it doesn't matter about seeing somebody face to face, or geography doesn't matter as much, because you're reading into the tone, you're reading emails, you're reading body language, so you can catch a lot of these things early. So you can catch conflict early. Mm-hmm. You can catch whether somebody's being deceitful or honest very early. And so that, on my business side, that got busier. And then I've had more people reach out from, there's an augmented reality team building exercise I have where it has people look through 2 tablets with 2 crime scenes. And they have police reports and video interviews. And so I've had a number of companies actually engage me for that. And we had to do that more virtually, where I had to send out the tablets, and then they would have to interview 2 potential suspects, which we had as actors, and then pin which one of the 2 crime scenes was done by which of the 2 suspects.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so I've definitely become busier. And then, of course, I've got increased my content. I've got 2 podcasts, one on intuition, one on intuitive branding. And so they've been really, really increasing in sort of people listening and downloading. I think I've tracked it in over 30 countries now for both of them. So, and I'm increasing the content. So I've been definitely much busier. My team's expanded. And for me, I'm loving it, because people are now coming into figuring out who they really are. And there's such a long-term satisfaction for this that it makes me super happy.
Well, you definitely have, brought some huge attention here, and I'm hoping that the listeners will truly value what you're talking about and really take another look at themselves and realize that, gosh, I just made this decision. Was it the right decision yesterday, or today, or whatever the case may be? I really believe that intuition is a very important part of your life, like I said, whether it's personal or whether it's professional. And if we do listen to those gut instincts and start to balance it, because for me, I always talk about the fact that if it's not everything in sync for me, I definitely know that is not the direction I'm going to go, whether it's personal or whether it's, business. And a lot of times people don't get that, it's like, they'll try to throw that, hey, well, the numbers are here and, this is going to be perfect. It's going to work. It's like, yeah, but something's missing, and I definitely have learned to listen through that. I don't know if it's a big part of it too, is my personal experiences, going through domestic abuse too, you kind of have a whole different outlook of what you've gone through in life and start to pay more attention to those triggers, that intuition of feeling something's not right. And, it's unfortunate, like you said, that you have to hit that rock bottom or have to go through a certain experience in life to realize that it's always been there. And if you learn to utilize that tool or that resource that you have within you, then things will definitely move much smoother for you. And, as I always tell people, at the end of the day, you have to learn to trust the journey that you're on, because life is a journey, and business is no different in that perspective. And, what you're doing is amazing. I love that you are bringing this out of people professionally. And I'm sure that even though it's all done professionally, that, personally, it hits them in a different way as well.
Absolutely. And because intuition doesn't discern between your personal and professional life. All it looks at is what's the decision you're making, and is this right for you based on your values and your company's values, your core values, and what your purpose is. And that's it. And so it's a positive signal or a negative signal. It's now up to you to listen to that. And it's up to you to sharpen those skills,
exactly.
With or without me. And even if you fail, this is the one thing I say. Some people are afraid of failure. That's fine, because what happens is if you fail or have a hurdle, that's fantastic, because now what you do is you have another signal that you missed that you can now add it to the inventory, so that you will never make that bad decision again.
Exactly.
So, it just helps people just grow immensely and find that personal success, which is very intrinsic in nature, and they are so happy from the inside, and they forget about what happens on the outside.
Right. Exactly. Well, all right. Well, wow. Sunil, we could talk for hours on this, because this is
Absolutely.
such an amazing topic of conversation. And like I said, you have definitely provided us some excellent information tonight. And I truly, truly hope that people would listen to this over and over, because this interview tonight has just been off the chain. So I'm excited that we got the opportunity to connect. But before you go, could you please tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you, and also where they can purchase your books as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to sunilgodse.com, there's everything there on intuitive branding. Pretty soon I'll have a webinar there. There'll be a webinar on the process of intuitive branding. So you can always take a look at how I do things in a little bit more detail with some case studies. You can purchase my books there. There's also the audiobook is there for Guts. So that's where you can go for those resources. So I'm hoping you can support me in at least just taking a peek at what I'm doing. And if you like what I do and want to find success in your life, give me a call.
All right. Well, couldn't end in a better way. So again, I thank you for coming on tonight, Sunil. Like I said, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. And of course, for everybody else, if you haven't been listening, like I said, you need to go back and re-listen, because we've learned a lot about leveraging our intuition this evening. And it always kind of leads me into asking the same question each week about, our dreams and our goals and how we're going to get there. So if you're really, truly interested and prepared and want to take those next steps, please, reach out to me at Kimberly at WSBILC@gmail.com. Let's have that chat. Let's talk about those goals and those things that you desire, and let's make it happen. And of course, if you want more of your resource for success, we do take monetary donations to support the podcast, and we will provide the information for you in the information on the DM for you, or you could also go to www.wsbilc.com, which is the website, and you can also do your donation there if you'd like to support us. And again, we would like to thank you all for listening to us tonight. We will be back next week with more amazing guests. Be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcast. But until then, you enjoy the rest of your evening, and good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
Whatever the adventure, there's a BMW engineered to take it on. The X3 delivers a striking design with agile performance. The 100% electric i4 packed with pure electric energy. Or the plug-in hybrid X5, an impressive versatile SUV granting full control on every journey. Choose what powers your next adventure during the BMW Road Home Sales Event. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Hurry in for exceptional offers through January 2nd. Visit bmwusa.com for details.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.